within the rainforests of Borneo, in the Malaysian state of Sarawak, live a tribe of nomads called the Penan. They hunt for wild game with blowpipes and poison darts, and their movements follow the seasonal ripening of the forest fruits. The jungle is their home, the source of their culture, their livelihood, their religion. They say the forest belongs to those who live there, and to their ancestors and their descendants. The Penan believe that everything has a soul, the animals, trees, earth, rivers, even the stones, and that people must remain in harmony with the natural world. They see nature as the creator and themselves as the caretakers of the forest. But now the forest, the center of their life, is disappearing. Under Malaysian law, the Penan don't own the trees that grow on their land, and the Malaysian government has big plans for the trees. Malaysia is the world's largest exporter of tropical hardwoods, and here in Sarawak, the forests that shelter and sustain the Penan are being cut down as fast as anywhere on earth.
Within 1 year or in the next year, if the company cannot be stopped, it will be too late. Even not 1 year, maybe 3 months if the company really drives on the logging roads. You walk on foot. Within 1 week, you can pass our whole land. It's not a big land. But if our land is destroyed, that's like our death.
Many of the Penan have been left homeless and impoverished, forced to leave the familiar world of the forest.
If you take a traditional hunter-gatherer group that knows how to manage their environment, how to live in their environment, if you move those people 50 miles down the road, they can starve to death because every ecosystem is different. You move them down the road, they don't know where the bamboo is for the arrows. They don't know where the permanent water supplies are during the dry season. They don't know where tubers grow that they can harvest when they don't have any other form of food.
In April 1987, the Penan took action to save the forest and themselves. They joined other native groups in erecting blockades across their land to prevent the logging companies from entering. But their efforts were futile. Government forces struck back, burning Penan huts and barricades and arresting their leaders. The protests have continued, but the Penan are no match for the police or the logging companies, and the destruction goes on. "20 years ago, there were 10,000 Penan living a traditional nomadic life. Today, there are only 500, and the paradise they knew is gone forever." What's happening in Borneo is happening around the world. With rainforests disappearing at an alarming rate, how can native peoples who live there survive? And it's not just rainforests that are at risk. Everywhere, the natural world is under siege, and indigenous peoples face extinction.
See how Brazilian Indians have used technology to preserve their ancient culture when Explorer continues.
The northern edge of our continent that's unlike any other place on Earth. a vast wilderness set aside as the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. It's an ancient sanctuary and a place of birth for creatures of many kinds. Every year, a great herd of caribou sweeps down over the mountains to have its young here. But underneath this plain may be a gigantic pool of oil, one of the largest untapped fields left on the continent. Oil companies would like to see part of the refuge opened up for development. But drilling here could be disastrous for the caribou, destroying their vital calving grounds. At risk is not only the environment, but the people who have lived in this region for thousands of years. In Arctic Village, Alaska, Gwich'in Indians from both sides of the U.S.-Canadian border are gathering for the first time in a century. They're worried about oil development in the caribou calving grounds because caribou are at the heart of Gwich'in culture. Like the buffalo for the Plains Indians, so are the caribou for these northern people. The source of food, tools, traditions.
The buffalo were the soul of a nation. And when the caribou are going to be taken away from the Gwich'in, then they will suffer the same fate. It's without question that they will be destroyed as a culture because their culture revolves around these great animals.
Twice each year, the migrating caribou must ford the Porcupine River in Gwich'in territory. They almost always cross in the same places, and that's where Gwich'in hunters have always waited. Nowadays, they use modern boats and weapons, but the hunters take only the animals they need, and they share the kill with those who can't hunt. They waste nothing. The Gwich'in feel responsible for the herds, and they know their future is linked to that of the caribou.
It just hurts inside to think that there'd be no caribou in my lifetime. It would mean our health. It would mean the health of our nation, the health of our people, and our survival. All our traditional skills, our whole way of life would be lost if there was no caribou.
For now, the caribou are safe, and so are the Gwich'in people. But the lure of oil leaves their future in doubt. The hunger for natural resources poses risks for indigenous people all over the world. But a few tribes are turning the threat to their advantage. While other native groups have resisted change or been overwhelmed by it, the Kayapo Indians of Brazil have embraced it. This fiercely independent tribe has chosen to adapt to the modern world, but only on their own terms. Through it all, they remain Kayapo, in control of their land and their destiny. The Kayapos still hunt and fish as they always have, with only a slight concession to modern conveniences. The Indians call this the attack on the fish. They beat the water with bundles of vines, forcing sap into the river. Deprived of oxygen, the fish suffocate and rise to the surface. It's part of a way of life they've honed over many generations.
We don't lust after money, we don't lust after Brazilian things. We all still go to the forest and hunt animals. We all still go fishing. Our wives still go to the gardens to get food for our children. We do everything just as before.
But change has come to the Kayapo. 10 years ago, a gold strike drew some 3,000 miners onto Kayapo territory, and they brought modern civilization with them.
Que te dê segurança, senão cê dança, senão cê dança. Que te dê segurança.
The Kayapo were promised a share of the profits, but the government reneged. So the tribe seized the town's airstrip and took over the mine themselves. To manage the operation, the chiefs appointed a young Indian named Irio, who had been sent away to school to learn bookkeeping and accounting. He views the mine as a necessary evil, but a temporary one.
We don't want this gold mine. We're going to close it down. We're going to reclaim this land for our sons, for our daughters, for our grandchildren, and our descendants to rule.
With their mining revenues, the Kayapo bought their own plane and hired a Brazilian pilot. They patrolled their land to keep out illegal miners, ranchers, and timber cutters. The Kayapo have even acquired the ultimate Western accessory, a video camera, which they use to preserve their ceremonies.
It is so that our children and grandchildren will look at these pictures and not forget.
Important meetings with outsiders are also recorded. When a group of pilots tried to change their contract for flying planes to the mine, the Kayapo had the original negotiations on tape.
The Brazilians speak falsely. They break their promises. Now we have learned to use this technology. We can record what the Brazilians say for the Indians and the Brazilians to hear. And so the Brazilians will be forced to act according to their words.
The Kayapo are using the products of modern society to defend their ancient culture. But this is not an easy battle to win, as many groups have discovered.
The biggest problem for indigenous peoples worldwide is that they have to fight at all fronts. They have to fight to preserve their lands. They have to fight to preserve their land rights, their subsoil rights, their air rights, their water rights. They have to fight to maintain their own schools and their own ways of teaching. They have to fight against an exploitative economic system. I think the main problem is that they don't really, up to now, have the respect that they ought to have.
The Kayapo are among the few who have won that respect. Prosperous and politically savvy, they seem to be holding their own, at least for now. And their success may serve as an example for other indigenous groups.
There are many secrets in the rainforest. The Jivaro people have learned a few. Stay tuned.
Like the Kayapo, the Jivaro of Peru possess a valuable resource, but it's far more precious than gold or timber. Their greatest treasure is their knowledge. Like all rainforest peoples, the Jivaro know and use an enormous number of medicinal plants. They have treatments for everything from gum disease to rheumatism to flesh wounds, and they're constantly expanding their knowledge, looking for new and better cures. We depend on these forests for medicines too. A quarter of all prescription drugs in the U.S. are derived from tropical plants. Yet only a few of the countless species in the rainforest have ever been analyzed. There may be cures here for cancer or AIDS, but only the Jivaro and other native groups can help us unlock the secrets of the rainforest. Now, Western scientists like Walter Lewis are listening closely to the Jivaro. What they learn could change medical history.
We've actually examined the roots of one of these species and found them to be very effective against hepatitis, so we felt we'd better try several of these because the Jivaro say that, in fact, they are very useful, that they can cure hepatitis. So it's definitely worth a serious experiment.
Lewis and other researchers are in a race against time to preserve the intellectual heritage of these people before it's too late. With the destruction of the rainforest, the legacy of thousands of years could vanish. The Jivaro are willing to share their secrets with the outside world. But how should they be compensated for their knowledge? It's a controversial question and an urgent one.
All this indigenous knowledge that peoples have developed over centuries is valuable. Traditionally, it's generated a lot of money for companies and for states very distant from the peoples who have actually invented this knowledge. They need to benefit from it. If we can't figure out ways for them to be justly compensated, then they're going to disappear, and with them, all the knowledge that we're all going to depend upon.
If the Jivaro and other cultures are to survive, the rainforest must be preserved, and they may be the only ones who know how to use the forest without destroying it.
We have a group of people who live in harmony with their environment. They are great conservationists from the point of view of using just what they need and leaving the rest. Let them take care of the plants and animals, the whole ecosystem, not only for themselves, but for us as well.
For indigenous people worldwide, the risk of extinction looms large. The threat is so severe that some, like artist Felipe Letterston, are working to preserve a record of the last isolated tribes before they disappear.
Well, other people have entered here for the gold, for the wood, for the rubber. Others have been in here for faith. Me, I'm going there to applaud and to say how beautiful you are. And I think I've been very lucky to meet these Indians, and they've showed me things we've lost.
Letterston is a sculptor, forging statues of native tribes who have held on to their traditional costumes and cultures. Each year, he must travel greater distances just to find them. The subjects he chooses are often isolated villagers who have never before seen a statue. They're sometimes hard to persuade. But Letterston feels it's worth the effort because he's building a bridge between two worlds.
For me to make this statue, it's like a peaceful chain in between us and the Indians, because this is the real encounter of two cultures, like it should have happened, you know, with respect one culture to the other. That's beautiful.
As the plaster cast is reassembled back at Letterston's studio in Peru, the statue begins to take shape. When the process is finished, a young Indian girl will be reborn in bronze, a tribute to her culture that may outlive the tribe itself. Bronze statues can only provide an impression of these people, their likeness, but not their essence. The Earth's indigenous peoples, their cultures, their way of life, their world, all may soon disappear forever. And our world will be poorer for the loss.
Then go on safari to compare the lives of Africa's